See, we are going to see the topic called constructor in Java. For example, here what happens? Class student. Okay, we are creating one class named student. Here you are creating an object which is nothing but the instance of that class student, right? Creating a object called yes object. So in earlier examples, we have seen class student, okay, void display system.out.println object ready, something you are giving, closing it. Now, when you say student yes equal to new student like this, here when you say student s equal to new student, what exactly happens? This object s is getting created. But if you want to, if you want this particular text to be displayed, what will you do here? You have to call that method, right? Is it so? You have to call that method. So you will say yes dot display like this explicitly. Is it so?
Yes.
So that the output will be like object created. So this is how it works. But for example, you don't, some items like object created or something which is like by default, everything has to be done. In that case, you don't need to explicitly call a method. Instead, what you can do, instead of writing all these statements like system.out.println, instead of writing this inside a method, you have to write everything inside a constructor called student. You can, the constructor name should be same as the class name. Okay, and you have to put this code inside this constructor. So in that case, you don't need to explicitly call this method, but what happens is, once you create s equal to new, this will automatically runs the constructor. You got it? You don't need to explicitly call, but it will run, this constructor will run automatically when you use the keyword new, right? So here if you see class student system.out.println object ready. Here you are creating an object called yes. So once it sees this, the keyword new, it will automatically call the student, like this constructor named student, and it will display object ready. You got it? You got the difference between this one and this one? Using a method and using a constructor. When you use a method, you have to explicitly call this method to display this. But if you are using constructor, you don't need to use like explicitly call anything, but automatically this will be executed. Whatever the code inside the constructor will be executed. So this is the purpose of constructor. Okay.
Okay.
So a constructor is the setup code that prepares a new object before you use it. Okay. Main idea, when an object is created, Java automatically runs a constructor to initialize its data. So as I told you, you don't need to explicitly write anything to call that. Directly, once it sees the keyword new, this will call the constructor and execute whatever the set of codes inside this constructor. Now, class name object equal to new, this part after new invokes the constructor. You got it right? Okay. Now, a constructor looks like a method, but it's not a method. You know, right? It will look like a method, but this is not a method actually. So as I told you, constructor name should be same as the class name. Okay. And name equal to unknown. For example, if you are declaring anything and assigning something to that variable, you have to give whatever you want. You can put it inside the constructor block. Okay. So name should be same. The constructor name must be explicitly the same as the class name. And here, no return type. The second important thing is it will not return anything. For example, if you want to add something like A equal to B plus C, and if you are return A like that, it will not do. It will just initialize and do something, and it will try to do system.out.println something you want to display. All these things it will do. It will not return anything. Okay. And what is the purpose? Its job is to initialize object data, not to return a value. Okay. So moving on to the other one, a constructor. How a constructor is invoked? They will ask you. Okay, so a constructor is invoked automatically through the keyword new. Student S equal to new student, student S2 equal to new student of Ravi. This is one example. Here we are not passing any arguments, but here you are passing arguments named Ravi and 17. So that is the difference. But in both the cases, once it sees the keyword new, it will automatically call this constructor. This is one constructor and this is another constructor. Why? Because that we will see later. What is the difference? Okay. Here we are not passing any variable, but here we are passing arguments. So that is the difference. But how it is getting invoked? What the answer of that question is, once it sees the keyword new, those constructors will be invoked. Okay. So here arguments select constructor. So as I told you, right, here we have already seen how it will be. This one will be like student. But if you are passing some variable like here Ravi and 17, so in that case, this is the constructor. So where you are passing Ravi and 17. So Ravi, new student of Ravi. So in this case, this will call this constructor student of Ravi, and so this Ravi will be assigned to the variable name. You got it?
Yes, sir.
Ravi of this constructor, and 17 will be assigned to this one.
Int 8.
So system.out.println. So Ravi plus age, it will be displaying one space and then 17 will be displayed. So once you create an object S2 equal to new student, directly you will get the output as Ravi 17 like this. You don't need to explicitly call that constructor. Just by looking into this thing, this will be displayed. So what is happening? New Java starts object creation. Once it says Java, what it does, it will create an object and space is allocated into fields. Space will be allocated. Now it will call the matching constructor. Here, for example, we have maybe in the next one I can tell you, or here only I'll explain you. Here class student, this one is there. I'm writing one more constructor, student, inside which I'm giving system.out.println hello. Closing it, closing the constructor and closing the class student. So how many constructors we have inside this class student? How many constructors we have? This is one constructor. And this is another constructor. You got it? Student. What is the difference? Here, there is nothing.
No parameters.
Empty, no parameters. But here we have two parameters. So there are two constructors. So here when you see student S1 equal to new student, there is no parameter. So what will happen? This will call this constructor automatically. You got it? But this will call this parameter, second constructor, student string name int age. You got it? So this is nothing but overloading, constructor overloading. There is a concept called constructor overloading. Overloading means what? Though the name of the constructor is same, according to the argument or whether it is empty or some parameters, Accordingly, it will call that specific constructor, right? So that is nothing but constructor quad overloading. That we will see it later in detail. Okay. You got it right? Can I move on?
Yes, sir.
So you normally do not call a constructor like a normal function. Java calls it during object creation. Are we calling anything like this? S2 dot student, something like that? No, we don't need to explicitly call. Once it creates the object only, it will call the constructor automatically. So what are the features of constructor? Name, constructor name must match the class name. That is very important. Okay. Class name and the constructor name should be same. And no return type. I told you, right? We can't return anything. We can just accept the values and display something. We can't return anything. This is auto invoked, runs automatically. When exactly this will get automatically called? When you
Object is created.
Yes, when a new object is created. And what can we do? Initializes data, right? We can initialize any data, sets starting values for instance variable. Like we have seen, right, in the earlier class, instance variables. So here, for example, I can create something called int A. Int A I can give. This is nothing but an instance variable, and why we say instant variable, sorry, it's uh, that's what they say, right? Initializes data, sets starting values for instance variables. We can do it and can overload. I told you, right, what is overloading? According to the parameter we use, pass, that particular constructor will be called, which is nothing but overloading. Same class can have many constructors with different parameters.
Parameters.
And even see, for example, I'll add one more constructor here inside this class, like student. Uh, like I'm giving string yes, comma, int age, comma, int height. I'm giving something here. So here, if I say student S3 equal to new student, I'm giving R, comma 17, comma 5.2. What will happen? Sorry, not double quotes. It's only integer. So what will happen? This will call, there are three parameters. So which constructor will be called? The third one, because it has 3. Okay. So this is nothing but overloading. Okay. Constructor overloading. Same class can have many constructors with different parameters. And the last one, not inherited. Subclass constructors can call parent constructors using super. That we will see later. What do you mean by parent constructor and the keyword super? Using which, how a subclass can call a parent constructor, we can see it later. So what is the point? Constructors can use access modifiers also. Public, private, protected, default, everything. Like how we use for methods, right? We can have different access modifiers. So these are the features of constructor. It can have same name, no return type, auto invoked, initializes data, can overload, not inherited. Okay. Now there are different types of constructors: default, non-parameterized, parameterized, and copy. But for you, we don't have copy, so I'm just ignoring that. So we are going to see the different types of parameters: default, non-parameterized, and parameterized. Okay. So default and non-parameterized both have no arguments, but one is compiler provided and one is user written. So default and non-parameterized constructors are not exactly same. So I'll give you one example to understand both. First, I'll just go to default constructor, explain you that with an example. Class student, string name, int age, void display. So this is what void display is. What? It's a what? Method.
Display is a method.
System.out.run name this thing. Now, public static void main string student s equal to new student s dot display. So here, are we defining any constructor here? No constructor.
No.
There is no constructor at all.
Hmm.
In this program, we are not giving any constructor. So what exactly will happen here? Student s equal to new student. So Java, what it will do once it sees the keyword new, it will call the constructor. But here there is no constructor. So what will happen? It will call the default constructor. It is like a hidden thing. Student super. I told you, right? So super means what it happens? Nothing is there. So it will directly point to this class only. There is nothing going to happen here. No difference at all. Okay. But it will call this constructor. But here, by default, it will be something like super. Super is nothing but it will call the class. That's all. So nothing is going to happen. So now the second part is s.display. So s.display means it will call this method. This object will call this method and it will give name, age. So here what happens when it calls this one string name, this is an instance variable. So we are not initializing any variable here, right? So what will happen? What is the default value of that string? Default value, null. Default value of age, that is for integer, it is 0, right? So here what happens when it creates this new, it will call this default constructor and in turn it calls this class. So in that case, nothing is getting initialized. So what happens inside this name, inside this instance variable, null will be there. Age, for age it will be 0. Okay. Now it comes to the next one, s.display. Now it calls the method display. System.out.println name is name. So name means here what it will do, s.name. What is there in s.name? Here, what is there in s.name? By calling the constructor, we had null and
Can
0.
you hear me?
Huh?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry. My mic was unmuted.
So s.name, we had null. In s.age, we had 0. By calling the default constructor, these default values are assigned, right? And now when you call this method display, and when it says name, which is nothing but s.name, what is there inside s.name?
Null.
Null. So null will be displayed. Name, here it is there, right? Name is null and age is 0. So this is what it is. This is called default constructor. You don't need to explicitly define this constructor. It will automatically understand and reroutes to the class. Why? Because already we are defining the instance variables inside the class. So that will do the like a thing what it wants to do. So this is nothing but default constructor. Okay. Now, now this is an example for non-parameterized constructor. We have already seen, right? We are not passing any parameter, right? It's empty. Student empty is there. Name equal to unknown. Now, when you say student s equal to new student, it is calling the constructor of this class. Okay. And we have already seen this example earlier, right? And whatever it is there, unknown will be given to this string variable name. So this is nothing but non-parameterized constructor. But here we are not explicitly defining anything like the constructor. We are not writing anything like a student or something. Then when you try to create an object, this will Java itself supply student. How it will be, I told you earlier, student will be like super. which means it will call this class string name age. Okay. So you got the difference between default and non-parameterized constructor?
Different.
So compiler adds it only if no constructor exists. So when exactly the compiler will add? When there is no constructor. It will understand this. But if there is a constructor, then it will call that constructor. If there is no parameter, then it is called non-parameterized constructor. What is parameterized constructor? As I told you, student string n and a you are giving. So when you pass Ravi and 17, so in that case, it will call this parameterized constructor. We have already seen these examples here, right? I told you. So here this is called non-parameterized constructor, and these are called parameterized constructors. You got it? We are passing some arguments, right? So these are called parameterized constructors and these are called non-parameterized constructors. Okay. So parameterized constructors receive values during object creation. When the object is created, we have to provide the values Ravi 17. So this Ravi and 17 will be passed to these variables. So this is nothing but S1 dot n. So in this is nothing but what? S1 dot n, right? Here name equal to n. So what will be there in n here? Ravi, right? S1 dot age equal to a. What will be there in age? 17, we are passing it to a. So it is 17, right? So this is nothing but parameterized constructors. This will receive values during object creation. During object creation only, we are passing the values for those parameters. And that's how it is assigned. So arguments in new student Ravi 17 must match the constructor parameter, and it should match. Here one string variable value is there, one integer is there. So in that case it should match it. So for example, if you give like a new student of 18 comma 17, this will not match because this is also an integer, this is also an integer. We don't find any parameter with two argument type string int and int. We have only string and int. So this will not match with this. You got it what I am saying? Anya, you are able to see or understand this?
Different.
Ravi and 17. This is string and integer. So this will match with only this. If you give 17 and 18, then it will not match. It will consider this as both integers and there is no matching constructor, it will say.
Huh.
Yeah, so this is what it is. Okay. Must match the constructor param list. Okay. So we don't have copy constructor. So now the topic which we're going to see is the difference between the constructor and functions. So what is the purpose of a constructor? This initializes a newly created object, right? This will initialize. Okay, and if you see functions, this performs an action or calculation. And what is the name? Name should be same as the class name. But here function means any valid method name we can give. It is not like we have to use the same name as class or something. And what is the return type? We cannot use any return type, but in method we can, right? We can have a return type or void. And how can we call it? Called by automatically during new keyword. But here you have to explicitly call that method. And what is the return value? Cannot return a value. This will return a value. And overloading. Can we overload it? Yes, we can overload. Okay. But in function also we can have overloading mechanism, right? Using the same like how we have in constructor according to the arguments which we pass. We can use the same method name but with different parameter arguments or parameter which we pass. It will call that method. So this overloading mechanism is for methods also. And what is the example? Student. But here we can have anything like display or add. Okay, so constructor creates and initializes. Method works after the object already created. This goes in hand. Object creation and constructor calling, everything goes hands in hand. But here you have to first create the object, and then only using the object you have to call that method. So that is the difference. So what is the common mistake we do? Class demo. This is a constructor. But here void demo. This is when you use this void, then it has become a method, not a constructor. Okay. So mistake one, writing void before. You are not supposed to write anything like void or int or whatever it is before the constructor. It should be something like this, plain. And trying to call a constructor, like you can't call like this. As I told you, if you say object name dot something, if you give, it will consider this as a method, not a constructor. So how this is getting called automatically? When you give class name object name equal to new object, this constructor will be called automatically. You don't need to call this way, like how you do for method. And what is the third mistake we do? Writing any constructor removes a compiler provided default constructor. Okay. So when you write, if you write a constructor explicitly, like compiler will not call the default constructor. Okay. So final checklist, same name as class, no return type, runs during new, initializes object, can be overloaded. Okay. So these are the items we have to keep an eye when you create a constructor and passing the arguments or whatever it is. Okay. That's it about the constructors in Java. Okay. Thank you so much. I'm stopping here.